Okay, let's give you guys some help with your homework. So here you've got this problem here. You've got two pig dice. So when you roll one pig die, it can either land on this position, this position, this position, this position, or this position. The probability of it landing on this position would be 0.57 and so on. And it wants to know what is the probability that when you roll both pig dice, when you roll both pig dice, they will both land on trotter. So when you roll two pig dice, it will land on a trotter, and so when you roll a pig die, it will land on a trotter, and the other die, being the other pig die, it will also land on a trotter. So you want trotter, trotter. So it wants to know the probability that they will both land on trotter. Okay, so the idea behind this is to draw a map of all the things that could happen. So let me give you an example with my game. I've got a similar game where I've got a giraffe. The probability it will land on leggy would be this. Land on sidey would be this. Heady would be this. So I'm going to roll two giraffe dice. So when I roll one giraffe die, it can either land on this position, or this position. Notice that when I roll one die, notice that all these add up to 1. So it must land on one of these three with one die. Well, anyway, I'm going to roll two giraffe dice. What is the probability that they will both land on sidey and sidey? Okay, so the idea with probability is that you draw a map of all the things that could happen. So let's say you are here at the moment. So when you roll two dice at the same time, you can imagine it as you rolling one die and then later on rolling another die. That will have the same effect as you rolling both dice at the same time. So when you roll both dice at the same time, imagine it as you rolling one die, and then when that's done, roll the other one. So on your first die, you could ask yourself, what could happen? So you're here at the moment. You roll your first die. What could happen? Well, it could only land on one of these three positions because all these probabilities add up to 1. So on your first die, ask yourself, what could happen when you roll your first die? Well, it could land on leggy, or it could land on sidey, or it could land on heady. So it could land on leggy, sidey, or heady. Well, what's the probability of it landing on leggy? Well, leggy would be 0.38. What's the probability of it landing on its side? So it would be 0.6. What's the probability of it landing on its head? 0.02. So that's the first die done. So let's say you roll the first die and then it happens to land on a leggy. So you've gone down this path. So you are now here. Now you've got to ask yourself, well, don't forget you're trying to draw a map of all the things that could happen. Well, you roll your second die. You've got to ask, so you are here at the moment because you're on your second die. Hang on, let's start again. Hang on. Let's start again. Bear with me. Let's start again. So you are currently here. You roll your first die. So you've got to ask yourself, what could happen? Well, you could land on a leggy, sidey, or a heady. So let's just suppose we landed on a leggy. So we've gone down this route. So we are now here. Now on your second die, roll this die, and you've got to ask yourself, what could happen on your second die? Well, on the second die, you could land on a leggy, a sidey, or a heady. So really what you're doing is you're drawing a map of all the things that could happen. So let's go back to the beginning of time. So you're now here. So let's go back to the beginning of time. So you are now right here at the start. Now on your first one, you roll a die. Let's just say you landed on a sidey. So you've gone down this path. So just imagine you landed on a sidey. So you've gone down this path. So you've already rolled your first die. You are now here. Now on your second die, you've got to ask yourself, what could happen on your second die when you roll your second die? Well, it could land on leggy, sidey, or a heady, and so on. Let's go back to the beginning of time. You are now here. So let's go back to the beginning of time. So on your first die, you roll this die. Let's just say you've landed on your head. So this is a heady. So you've gone down this route. So you are now here because on your first die you rolled and you landed on your head. So now on your second die, you've got to ask yourself, what could happen on the second die? Well, it would look. Well, the idea here is to draw a map of all the things that could happen. So it would look like this. What was it? H, S, and H. Sorry, L, S, and H. Now, because I'm asking you, what is the probability that they will both land on side E? So side E, I'll require this route here, side E and side E. So I need to go down this path. So suppose I roll my first die. What's the probability of me landing on a side E? It will be 0.6. And then on my second die, what is the probability of me landing on a side E on my second die? Well, on my second die, the probability will be 0.6 again. So it will be 0.6. So probability of side E equals, well, I need to go down this path here, side E path. I need to go down the side E path. So remember, when it comes to probability, if it's and, you times, if it's or, you add. Well, I need side E and side E, so I need to times. So it would be 0.6, this thing here, times 0.6, times 0.6. So this is my probability. Yeah, so this is my probability. So jump to a calculator and work this out, or do it by hand. But the point here is that if you're trying to work this, if you're trying to work out the probability if they both land on a trotter, draw a map of all the things that could happen. So when you start here. When you roll your first, so remember you've got two pick dice. You've got two pick dice. On your first die, you've got to ask yourself, what could happen? Well, it could land on whatever. And then on your second, so suppose on the first die you landed on a cider. So you are now here. Now on the second one, ask yourself, when you roll your second die, what could happen? Well, you could land on a cider, you could land on a trotter, blah blah blah, and so on. So go back to the beginning of time. And then ask yourself, suppose you roll the first die and then you landed on a trotter, so you've gone down this route, trotter, and so on. The point is, draw a map of all the things that could happen, all the possible things that could happen. Draw a map of all the things that could possibly happen, and then select the path that you're interested in. You're interested in trotter and trotter because it wants to know the probability of both dice landing on trotter. Well, do whatever you want, have a think. Okay.